This is the history of the Unification Movement in France, a journey defined by tears and glory. From 1965 to the era of the Mother of Peace, we explore how a small seed of faith grew amidst the storms of a secular, democratic republic. France, known affectionately as the hexagon due to its distinct six-sided shape, is a global powerhouse of 68 million people and a middle-power country of still great economic and military influence. At its heart lies Paris, a global powerhouse with a metropolitan population that has grown to 13 million as of early 2026. Yet beyond its power, it is the French art de vivre, the high standard of living and the historic dedication to art, science and thought that draws the world here. It is a land of immense beauty, from the Eiffel Tower to the spiritual grandeur of Notre Dame. Within this rich tapestry of culture and art de vivre, our journey begins. In 1965, Father Moon embarked on his first world tour with Mrs. Won Pok Choi and Miss Young Eun Kim, during which they visited 16 European nations over 40 days and established 19 holy grounds in 16 nations, preparing the foundation for a future world of peace. In Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon's own words, in 1965, I embarked on my first trip around the world. My suitcase was filled with soil and stones from Korea. My intention was to sow the soil and stones of Korea in each country, to signify its linkage to the world. By the time he returned to Seoul, his suitcase was once again full, this time with soil and stones collected from the 120 locations across the 40 countries they visited. On July 28, Paul Werner met Father Moon in Germany for the first time and was immediately entrusted with a vital mission to drive and his party across Europe in his Volkswagen bus. Following several days in Frankfurt and the surrounding area, the journey officially commenced on August 6, accompanied by Peter Koch. They embarked on an historical swift route, visiting Amsterdam, Brussels, Luxembourg and Paris. Their life on the road was marked by simplicity and a rigorous tight schedule dedicated entirely to the spiritual foundation they were laying. On August 10, 1965, close to the iconic Eiffel Tower, a historic milestone was reached. Their father established the first holy ground in France, spiritually grafting the heart of Korea to French soil. This sacred act took place even before a single pioneer had ever set foot in the country, preparing the spiritual providence for the years to come. Following this founding in Paris, the tour continued its rapid pace toward Geneva and Vaduz, in Liechtenstein, finally arriving in Vienna on the evening of August 15, 1965. On February 26, 1966, Rainer Vincennes arrived in Paris with only a suitcase and an immense faith. To claim his mission territory, he walked the streets of Paris for hours every day, searching for God's lost children. To survive, he cleaned offices from 5 to 9 a.m., feeling the suffering heart of God in those quiet hours. His first center was a tiny hotel room in the Latin Quarter, the birthplace of our movement. His first act was to walk to the holy ground at the Eiffel Tower, tracing the footsteps Father Moon had left just months before. Standing there in prayer, the weight of his mission became clear. He was the lone gardener responsible for the seeds planted in this great nation. 1968 brought a cultural earthquake to France. Just as the student protests began to shake the nation, Rainer found his first disciple Henri Blanchard. While one German student triggered a secular revolution, activist Daniel Cohn-Bendit, our German missionary, found the heart that would help rebuild the nation spirit. The momentum continued through the summer as Henri's brother, Remy, and their friend Therese Lebreton, also joined the ranks. Finally, on November 18, 1968, the movement gained its legal identity with the official founding of the Association for the Unification of World Christianity. This marks the beginning of a 21-year course to restore France back to God. At the beginning of 1969, we moved to our first official home in Boulogne-sur-Seine. As we began witnessing at Nanterre, the birthplace of the revolution, we faced our first direct confrontations with Marxist activists. The spiritual battle for the heart of France's youth had truly begun. To reach more people, the members began renting a room at the Quakers' house in Paris, providing a regular space for the first public divine principle lectures. The movement also looked outward, Remy Blanchard, one of the very first French members, departed from France to pioneer the mission in Lebanon, showing that, even in its infancy, the French Church carried a global heart for restoration. In February 22, 1968, Father and Mother Moon held the 430 couples blessing in Seoul, Korea. The 430 couples restored through indemnity the 4,300 years of Korean history. By including one Japanese couple, Osami Kuboki and his wife Tetsuko, true parents set the condition of connecting the blessing to non-Koreans. After that, they had to match the number 43 to the West. That's why, 1 year later, in 1969, during their second world tour, Father and Mother Moon blessed first 13 couples in Washington, D.C., USA on the 28th of February, then 8 couples in Essen, West Germany on the 28th of March, and finally 22 couples in Tokyo, Japan on the 1st of May. In Europe, Father and Mother Moon visited 8 European locations. On March 28, 1969, they arrived in Germany to a joyful welcome from 60 members gathered from across Europe. The highlight of this historic visit was the marriage blessing of 8 European couples, in Essen, Germany, with Rainer and Barbara Vincenz among them. This ceremony was a significant part of the worldwide 430 couple blessing, marking with this establishment of the ancestral pillar for Europe, the spiritual expansion of the movement's foundation on European soil. Soon after the blessing of Rainer and Barbara Vincenz, Henri and Hilda Blanchard joined the 777 couples blessing in Seoul, in October 21, 1970, anchoring the tradition of the blessed family on French soil. These two couples did more than just marry, they established the tradition of the blessed family in France. Their commitment provided the spiritual anchor that allowed the French movement to grow from a small group of young men and women into a community of families dedicated to Heavenly Parents' dream. The legacy of national leadership started in France with the pioneering days of the Vincenzes, who led the way from 1969 to 1973 and passed on to Henri and Hilda Blanchard, who guided the community until Henri was called to global missions with the IOWC in 1983. Following them, Dominique and Ursula Tito stepped forward to lead through the mid-80s and again in the early 90s. In 1994, a new chapter began when President Kwang Hee-sai appointed Laurent and Shigeko Ledouce. They served until 1996, at which point Laurent transitioned to his providential role as a national messiah. Then came the 2 decades of stable guidance from Hisako and Jean-François Moulinet. From 2019, as we moved into a more globalized sub-regional structure, David and Sylvie Perry took the helm as acting national leaders, guiding us through the challenges of the early 2020s. And finally, on January 1, 2024, we entered a historic new era with the appointment of Raphael and Domela Gignard. We welcomed our first second-generation national leaders, carrying the tears and glory of our past into a bright and hopeful future. In the spring of 1969, the spiritual foundation of France was forever strengthened. From April 2 to the 4th, 1969, Father and Mother Moon visited France for the second time. They returned to the Holy Ground to offer prayers for the nation and walk the historic path of French civilization, visiting iconic landmarks such as the Louvre and Versailles. For the pioneers, these were more than tourist visits, they were profound moments of acclaiming a French history and culture for heaven. They were accompanied by a distinguished delegation including Mrs. Won Pok Choi, Mr. Yo Won Yu, first president of the Korean Church, and Mr. Osami Kuboki, president of the Japanese Church. This gathering of international leadership signaled the immense providential importance of the European and French mission. For the small circle of French pioneers, Rainer and Barbara Vincenz, Henri and Remy Blanchard, and Thaïs Lebreton, the privilege of attending Father and Mother Moon and their party was both a demanding challenge and an immense spiritual joy. After the precious visit of Father and Mother Moon, the movement found a bold public voice setting up teaching charts in the Luxembourg Gardens and the Left Bank Latin Quarter. This was a season of building internal traditions as well, as the community established the weekly practice of the family pledge every Sunday, and significantly, we acquired our first printing press. Soon leaflets bearing the official movement logo were being distributed across Paris, turning a quiet mission into a visible public presence. From our first printing press to our first public lecture at the Sorbonne, the seeds of the divine principle were sown into the very soul of France.